Sometimes it happens in the smallest moments. You're standing in a group conversation at a friend's birthday dinner. The restaurant is loud, glasses clinking, everyone leaning in to be heard. You start to say something, just a simple story about your week, but halfway through, your voice gets softer. Someone else jumps in. You smile. You let it go. On the outside, nothing dramatic happened. Inside, though, you feel a little smaller than you did 5 minutes ago. Why does that happen? Why can being around certain people make you feel like you shrink? What you may be experiencing is a quiet pattern of shrinking around others, when your sense of yourself seems to contract in social spaces. In this video, I'll walk through why that happens, what it can grow out of, and a few small ways to understand it when it shows up. Shrinking around others is when your thoughts, voice, or presence pull back, not because you have nothing to say, but because something in you decides it's safer to take up less space. It's subtle. It can look like laughing off your own opinion, apologizing before you speak, or mentally stepping aside even when no one asked you to. One common reason is growing up in spaces where being too much felt risky. It doesn't always look harsh. Sometimes it's small corrections, don't be so loud. That's not how we do it, or even just a look that signals you've crossed an invisible line. Over time, your mind learns to scan for the right size to be. Not too big. Not too opinionated. Not too different. So in new groups, especially around confident or outspoken people, you instinctively adjust yourself downward. You might notice it when you're with someone who speaks quickly and decisively. You begin to second-guess your tone. You edit your story in real time. By the end, you've shared half of what you meant to. Sometimes, it comes from comparing your inside to other people's outside. When you look around, you see polished versions of others, steady voices, quick replies, strong opinions. What you don't see is their doubt, their second-guessing, or the moments they replay later at home. But because you only have access to your own internal noise, your hesitation feels larger than theirs. In many cases, this comparison doesn't feel dramatic. It's quiet. You're in a meeting. Someone speaks clearly and confidently. Your idea suddenly feels smaller in your own head. Not because it changed. Just because it's now sitting next to someone else's certainty. So you wait. You tell yourself you'll speak later. Later doesn't come. Over time, another layer shows up when you've been praised mostly for being agreeable. If people have often described you as easygoing, low maintenance, or so understanding, it can shape how you show up. Those qualities aren't bad. But if they become your main identity in a group, it can feel risky to disrupt them. Disagreeing might feel like breaking a quiet contract. So instead of saying, "I actually see it differently," you nod. You adjust. You let the conversation move without your full input. You leave thinking about what you didn't say. Not because you didn't have thoughts, but because part of you wanted to stay consistent with who others expect you to be. It's late afternoon, maybe around 4:30. You're in a conference room with coworkers, sunlight hitting the table at an angle. There are 8 of you around the table. The discussion is moving fast. You have a point. It's not groundbreaking, but it would help. You feel it forming in your chest. You wait for a pause. Someone else fills the silence. You tell yourself, "I'll say it next." The moment passes again. By the end of the meeting, you haven't spoken once. Walking back to your desk, you replay it. "I could have said something. Why didn't I?" Your stomach feels slightly tight, not panic, just a dull disappointment. If you've been there, you're not strange. You might know someone who lives like this. This is what shrinking can look like in real life. It doesn't mean you're incapable. It often means you were measuring your presence against an invisible scale. There's something important here that often gets missed. Shrinking isn't always about weakness. Sometimes it's about protection. Your mind may be trying to prevent rejection, conflict, or embarrassment. Taking up less space can feel like a way to stay safe in uncertain social terrain. But when it becomes automatic, you might start disappearing in rooms where you actually belong. One small shift that can help is noticing the exact moment you begin to shrink. Not later at home. In the moment. For example, when you feel your voice getting softer, or when you decide to hold back a thought, pause internally and name it quietly, "I'm pulling back right now." That's it. No judgment. Just awareness. This works because it separates you from the pattern. Instead of unconsciously shrinking, you see it happening. That tiny bit of space can be enough to choose whether you really want to step back, or if you want to finish your sentence. Another gentle practice is adjusting the goal in social situations. Instead of aiming to sound impressive or perfectly clear, aim to contribute one honest sentence. Not a speech. Not a flawless opinion. Just one real sentence. You might say, "I'm still thinking this through, but here's what I'm noticing." That kind of line leaves room for imperfection. It doesn't demand certainty. And in many cases, it softens the pressure you put on yourself to match someone else's tone or speed. Over time, these small shifts can change how large you feel in a room. Not because you become louder or more dominant, but because you begin to allow your natural size to exist. Shrinking around others can also show up in friendships. You might find yourself laughing at jokes that don't sit right, or agreeing with plans you're not excited about. It can feel easier to blend in than to risk creating friction. But blending in too often can leave you feeling oddly invisible. You're present, but not fully there. You go home and feel tired, even if nothing particularly stressful happened. It's the quiet effort of adjusting yourself again and again. This is for people who are thoughtful. For people who read the room before they enter it. For people who can sense shifts in tone within seconds. That sensitivity can be a strength. It helps you understand others. But when it turns inward too strongly, it can shrink you. You don't have to become someone bigger overnight. You don't have to suddenly take over conversations or force boldness. Sometimes it starts with letting your sentence land without apologizing for it. Letting your opinion sit in the air for a few seconds, even if no one immediately reacts. Feeling small around others doesn't mean you are small. It may mean you learned, somewhere along the way, that being smaller kept things smoother. Now, you're allowed to notice that pattern without blaming yourself for it. This is for people who look calm on the outside but quietly adjust themselves in every room. For people who can blend in anywhere, but sometimes wish they didn't blend so well. Maybe the goal isn't to stop shrinking completely. Maybe it's just to recognize when it's happening, and gently choose your real size when it feels safe. And if this reflection felt familiar, you're welcome to stay here for more quiet explanations like this, one small pattern at a time.